Something happened this week at Food for the Body and Food for the Soul, and it troubled me. A woman came into the center. She stood at the door, and she asked me what we were about, and I told her that, I explained a little bit of what happens at the center, and she said to me, when were you saved? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, when were you saved? If this is really a Christian space, and you are the Christian minister leading this, and you should be able to tell me the minute and the day that you were saved. And I said, well, I actually think that Jesus died for me even before I was born. I said, I've lived a Christian life, but I can't tell you the minute that you were saved, or that I was saved. Now, funny thing is, then she said to me, well, I'm not going to come in and eat with you because of this reason. Funny thing is, her husband was sitting just over there eating a bowl of soup and a sandwich. But it was really part of what was troubling was the conversation and the expectation, but also we were standing at the door, so there were people who were trying to come in, but couldn't come in and didn't want to kind of cross between us because the whole conversation was making people uncomfortable. And I thought, that's exactly what we're not about at the center, right? I mean, I think I've said before that I have people who come into the center on a regular basis, and they go, I thought this was a church space. And I go, well, it is. Then why do you have a pride flag in your window? But then I also have people who come to the center and they go, I thought this was a safe space. And I go, well, it is. Well, then why do you have a church sign in your window? It's like, it seems to me that there are too many people who are trying to find ways to divide ourselves, because to be really honest, dividing ourselves is much easier than uniting ourselves. The scripture verse, or the scripture that Rick read for us today from Acts, tells this story. And it's a story very similar to my experience at the center. Peter has been reported, right? So he's gone off and he's done something, and the news has come back to the leadership, and now he's in trouble. Why is he in trouble? Because he went to the home of a Gentile, so a non-Jew, and ate with them. And so now, the other part of the story that we miss is that at the end of that meal, the household, the entire household heard the message of the gospel and accepted the message of the gospel and accepted Jesus Christ. We don't always hear that part of the story. What we hear is the condemnation part of the story, right? You should not have gone in and eaten with those Gentiles. You should not sit down and eat with Muslims or Jews or Hindus or whoever. That's what the woman who was confronting me at the door was saying, is that if you cannot count yourself in the number, then you are not welcome. And not only are you not welcome, you are not entitled to be cared for. Scripture tells us something very different. Scripture, particularly today's scripture, because Peter had that vision. So when he was explaining to the leadership in Jerusalem why he went to the home of the Gentile, He said, well, listen, I had a vision. And in that vision, God spoke to me. And God confronted me on my unwillingness to participate. The other part of the story is that God also spoke to the Gentiles. God's Spirit appeared and said, go to Joppa, find this man Simon Peter, and bring him to your home. Now, I can imagine the conversation that the householder was having with his servants when he's sending them out. They're going, he's never going to come. You don't think that he's going to come to your house? Do we really want him in our house? I mean, he's one of those Christians, or he's one of those people following the way. He's going to try and convert us. But the Spirit worked on both men. And at the end of the interactions between both of them and God, or God's Spirit, there was this coming together. And the coming together meant that both of them, everybody who was involved in that story, had to let go of something, had to let go of their expectations, had to let go of their biases, had to let go of their prejudices. Peter had to go in and eat food that was, according to his tradition, unclean. The Gentile, I'm sure that the Gentile householder made provision in case Peter wasn't going to eat it. I remember one Lent. I decided at the beginning of Lent, and this is uncommon for United Church people, I know, but at the beginning of Lent, I decided I was going to give up meat. No meat. Then I went to a friend's house after church. And we sit down at the table for breakfast, and out comes eggs and bacon and sausage. And it's just laying there, right? But here's the thing. I only ate the eggs and toast. And after breakfast, Greg said to me, what's that about? And so I told him this thing about me giving up meat for Lent, and didn't you pull out this story? And I'm like, oh, man. He said, so in order to hold on to that fast, I rejected his hospitality. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't give up meat for Lent or whatever. I'm just saying that we have to know why we do what we do, and be open to that kind of confrontation. But here's the other scripture that we had today, right? Jesus says, I'm not going to be here for very much longer. And you now have to take on the mantle of this ministry. You have to take on the mantle of the message. You have to be, so he's talking to his disciples. We think that, I'm going to touch on that in a second. You have to carry forward this God that is the God of love. And you do it, right? Now remember elsewhere in Matthew's gospel, Jesus says, love God with all your heart, all your strength, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, because those are so closely interwoven. So Jesus says, you're taking on this message, this ministry, and you do it, you let people know that you are serious about it by loving each other. Now, I said he was talking to his disciples. We actually don't know that. We don't know if he's talking to a small group of 12 people who he's saying, love each other, or if he's talking to a larger group of people who all know each other, love each other, or he's talking to a larger group of people, some of whom don't know each other, love each other. But we do know that today, he's talking to us. Jesus is saying to us that you are called, that we are called to love each other, to live that love And in case we're wondering who each other is, right? He answered that question too. You love your friends, you love your family, you love strangers in the land, you love refugees, you love people who are hungry, you love your enemies. And then, it's even bigger than that. You love people that you don't know. In some ways, it's easier to love your enemy than it is to love someone you don't know. In some ways. But Jesus is saying that there are people that you will never meet in your life. You will never know them. But you're called to love them. You're called to love them. And so, on this day, as we hear these scriptures, let us be mindful that, somewhere else in Scripture, Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for humanity, not humans for the Sabbath. Rules, it's been said, are made to be broken. There are times when it would be the right thing to do for Peter to hold that fast. On that day, the only way that the message of the gospel was going to be communicated in a way that could be heard was if Peter gave up that rule, participated in that meal, accepted the hospitality, because then the people in that house were able to have, their ears were open to hear the message. Sometimes we need to let go of the rules in order to truly express the love that we have for each other. So, you are invited and welcome to come down to the center and have lunch. I won't ask you the minute and the hour that you were born again or saved. If you have friends who attend this church, they are welcome to come to the center and have lunch. If you have friends who don't attend this church, don't attend any church, call God by a different name, don't believe in God, they are invited to come to the center, and we will feed you. We will feed you physically. We will feed you spiritually. And hopefully, when you leave, your body will be nurtured, and your soul will be fed. Thanks be to God.